If you're someone who's interested in exploring the nature of experience and of the world around you, you might have come across a debate, particularly in non-dual circles, of whether the world actually exists or not. One side of the argument says the world is Maya, it's illusion. It isn't real, it doesn't really exist. And the other side says, let me drop a hammer on your toe and then see if you think that the world doesn't exist. So there's an interesting tension between these two viewpoints, and you might have already decided which perspective you share. But what if these two different sides actually aren't in opposition at all? In this video, I'm going to take a fresh look at the classic water and wave analogy to clarify what existence really means, what the true nature of the world is, and most importantly, how all this relates to your own direct experience here and now. So let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Katharine, and in these videos I share the insights and practices that I gained from living in an ashram in the Himalayas for 15 years. So let's begin with the wave and the water. You've probably heard this teaching before, but instead of jumping to its conclusion, let's see what actually is happening when a wave appears. So a wave looks like a thing. It rises, it moves, it curls, it breaks. It has a particular shape, a particular force and duration. And for that period of time, it seems to be a separate entity. But if you try to find the wave as a thing in itself, you never can. You can only ever find the water. And if you try to grasp the wave and keep it, you can't. You can only ever pick up water. So a wave is a movement of something else. Its essence is water, and the water doesn't change its essential nature when a wave appears. The water never becomes anything else but itself. So now let's take this a little deeper. Imagine you could drop beneath the surface and see things from the water's own perspective. From that point of view, the water is simply being what it is. Sometimes still, sometimes expressing itself in ripples and waves, currents, whirlpools. It has the capacity to appear in countless forms, but none of those forms define it. What we label as wave is just one temporary pattern that the water takes. The wave doesn't exist as an independent thing. It exists as the activity of something deeper. It's an appearance based on movement. And yet, from the surface, the waves can be describable. We can talk about their qualities. Some might be warm and gentle, others cold and powerful. Their size, their speed and force can all be observed and measured, as if they're things in their own right. But now imagine, just for the sake of this analogy, that the water itself has the capacity of self-awareness. So it becomes aware of its surface shape, and it identifies with this shape, and believes that this temporary form is me. Some waves see themselves as mighty and impressive, and others small and insignificant, but all of them fear the moment that they will crash back down and come to an end. In other words, each wave suffers because it only sees its temporary form. So what could resolve that suffering? One solution could be for the water to whisper to the wave, "Dear one, notice what you're actually made of. None of these shifting shapes actually define you. Your essence isn't bound by a rise or a fall. Your form may break on the shore, but what you truly are can never be broken. Look underneath the surface. Your nature is vast, formless, unchanging." So this is the path of knowledge, of Jnana yoga, when we're applying this back to our own awareness. And when we listen to these teachings and reflect on them deeply, we gradually loosen the assumption that a separate appearance must mean a separate awareness. And when we apply this understanding back to ourselves and begin to investigate our actual experience, we can start to notice that our thoughts and emotions and sensations, every single thing that our mind labels me or not me, are really just patterns arising in awareness. Their essence is awareness. Awareness is their unchanging nature. And none of these appearances alter what awareness is. And when you look more closely at this awareness, you find that you can't pinpoint where it begins or where it ends. It doesn't fit inside our usual categories of time or space, because our minds are used to understanding everything in terms of boundaries, but awareness isn't bound by boundaries. Just as water is completely untouched by the height of a wave or the distance that it travels, awareness isn't touched by the forms that appear within it. So this path of Jnana yoga, of knowledge or self-inquiry, is one way that the wave can recognize its true nature. A second way is for the wave to turn inward, to withdraw attention away from its surface appearance and return to its own beingness. In our analogy, this means shifting attention away from the drama of the form and sinking back into the water's essence. And this is what meditation really is. By bringing attention away from the waves of thoughts and outward forms, we start to become familiar with our own essential nature, the awareness in which everything arises. And then, even when thoughts, emotions, or sensations do appear, they can be recognized as movements of that awareness, not disturbances to it. So this practice of going inward starts to dissolve the wave's obsession with its own shape and fate, and a deep sense of peace begins to permeate. So now let's return to our original question about whether the world exists. Just because the qualities of a wave can be described, it doesn't mean that the wave is something other than water. Water is its fundamental reality. The wave is just a temporary appearance of that reality. In the same way, although we can describe the shapes and forms in the world, the trees and people and objects and sensations and so on, their essence is awareness. Awareness comes first. It permeates every experience. It remains after every experience ends. Awareness is what every wave of appearance is made of. So the important point is that the appearance is not separate from the awareness that knows it. Your mind might say, I, with my awareness, am located here, and all those things out there are separate from my awareness. But that is simply not the case. In reality, the mind and the things are all just waveforms arising in this same awareness. They're expressions of that awareness and are being known by that same awareness. So then, just like a wave, the world is real, because the awareness in which the world arises is real. But it's not real as an independently existing thing separate from awareness. So if you're unfortunate enough to have a hammer fall on your toe, the sensation is extremely vivid. It very quickly gives you a lot of information about the weight of the hammer and the reaction of your toe. But who would know any of this if there was no awareness? The entire experience, the hammer, the toe, the pain, arises like a wave in awareness, has its moment, and then subsides again. But nothing happens to the awareness itself. That remains completely untouched. So the debate about whether the world is real or unreal misses a really important point. The appearance of the world can be described and analyzed. And as apparent human beings, we can live and love and work and play in that field of experience. But it's not real as something separate from the awareness in which it appears. And when we begin to recognize this directly and not just intellectually, our relationship to experience starts to change. The fear, the grasping, the pressure to control life all soften. Because what you are isn't the temporary waveform that the mind fixates on. What you are is the open, unchanging awareness in which every wave rises and falls. This awareness is real. It exists. It's pure existence. And it's never threatened by any sensation or appearance, not even of a hammer falling on your toe. Bye for now.